Hello, it's Mrs. Taylor. Today is the day. The day has arrived. You get to learn another way to factor quadratics and then to eventually solve them. So today's section is titled 9-2 Solving Quadratics by Graphing. I want you to go ahead and write that as your title and then write this part right here, this paragraph that says the solution or solutions to a quadratic function are the point or points where the parabola crosses the x-axis. So I'm going to explain why there's an S in parentheses here in just a second, but make sure you have that written down. Okay, now over here in purple, this is going to make a little bit more sense in just a second, but we've talked about solutions before whenever we had linear equations or when we had lines, and so we're going to break this down. So if it's a solution and it's that point where it crosses the x-axis, that, remember, is called the x-intercept. So over here I'm going to write other names for solutions of a quadratic. They're also called, AKA, they're called x-intercepts because the solutions are actually where the quadratic crosses the x-axis, which is an x-intercept. Some other names that you might hear are zeros, and the last one that I've really heard is roots. So just be aware, those all mean the same thing. Solutions are the same thing as x-intercepts, zeros, roots. Okay, hopefully you have this written down. Next, I want you to draw these. They don't have to be on any certain part of the graph, but try to draw it to make sure it goes through 2 places on the x, 1 place here, and no places here. Okay? Just a rough sketch. So let's look at this first example. On this first example, it crosses the x-axis here and here. So this quadratic actually has 2 solutions. Okay, so I'm going to write 2 solutions underneath here. So again, make sure you have this graph with those 2 points and that you have 2 solutions. Okay, over here at example 2, this quadratic only touches the x-axis at 1 point. So this graph only has 1 solution. And lastly, this third graph, hopefully you can see it, it doesn't touch the x-axis or cross the x-axis anywhere. So this quadratic actually has no solution. Okay, so those are the 3 different things that you're going to see whenever you are graphing quadratics. All right, welcome back. So I have this nice graph drawn, and in your composition book, I would love if you could just draw this graph. The only thing I really need you to focus on is making sure you draw your x-axis, and this quadratic should go through this point right here and this point, just like I have. It's okay if the graph doesn't flow the rest of the way. As long as it goes through here and here, you'll be good, okay? So here's what I want you to notice. The question here is just tell me what the solutions are to this quadratic. And the quadratic is x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. So you can find this by graphing, and you can start in one of 2 ways. The first way is you can either graph it by hand, which is what we did yesterday and the day before. You learned how to find the axis of symmetry and the y-intercept and the zeros, and then you could graph it by hand. Or you can use your graphing calculator. So this is what I'm gonna go more in depth in class tomorrow about. You can pretty much always use your graphing calculator. And that's really what we're going to mainly do in this class. So I've already provided the graph for you so you can just look at it. The second step that you're going to do is find the point or points where the quadratic crosses the x-axis, and those are your solutions. That's all we're trying to do here. So my solutions are here and here. So what does x equal right here when it crosses that x-axis? Well, that is -1, -2. So x is either -2, or x could also be 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. So your solutions are -2 and 4. That's it. All right, this is your last example. And this is kind of a cool example because we're taking what we have been doing and we're working completely backwards. Okay, so here's the quadratic over here. And again, you don't have to draw in great detail, but I just want to make sure you have your points going through -4, x is a -4, and x is 3. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and write that because those are our solutions. We're trying to find the equation of the quadratic. And so whenever you're given the equation and you had to solve it, well, first you had to factor it, and then you had to set the factors equal to 0, and then that was your solution. But we're doing the opposite. So we're starting with finding the solutions to this graph. So the solutions are x is -4 or x is 3. So now we need to find the factors that give us this solution, -4 or 3. So remember, that was when we had something that looked like this. And I write it like this for a reason, because our factor, when set equal to 0, has to give us our solution. So just to illustrate, remember we had x plus 4 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. This is just a little backup to show you how I got from this step to this step. Okay, so if I'm trying to find x, I've got to subtract 4 from both sides, and I get one solution as x is -4. Great, that's what we got. And over here, we've got x is 3. Perfect, that's what we got up here. Okay, so that's where this comes from. We're just finding the factors from our solution. You didn't have to write that down. That was just a backstory. Okay, so now we have our factors. Now to find our equation, we've got to FOIL. Okay, so when we FOIL, we get x squared plus 4x minus 3x minus 12. And if we combine like terms, we get x squared plus x minus 12. Okay, so now we've got this equation, but this isn't all of it. Okay, we've got to find our a value. And our a value we can find by just picking a point anywhere on our curve. So this point right here, 4, 2, is a pretty obvious point. It's labeled. So I'm going to use this point 4, 2. So remember, this means x is 4 and y is 2. So we're going to go back to our factors right here, and we're going to plug in x and y. Okay? So this was our, whenever we're writing an equation, remember we typically write y equals something. So that's why I'm writing y equals x plus 4, x minus 3. So now I'm plugging in 2 for y, and I'm plugging in 4 for x. Just plugging in numbers. Oh, and I forgot, we're trying to find our a value. So our a value is the letter that's right in front of this set of parentheses. That's what we're trying to find. Okay, so I have a times the quantity of 4 plus 4 times the quantity of 4 minus 3. Solving for a. So 4 plus 4 gives us 8. 4 minus 3 gives us 1. So now we have 2 equals 8a. Still solving for our a value, so we divide both sides by 8, and we get a equals 1/4. Now we're going to use this a value, and we're going to multiply it by our equation that we found by doing FOIL. So we're multiplying this whole thing by 1/4. And when we do that, we get y equals 1/4 x squared plus 1/4 x minus 3. Oops. Minus 3. And that is the equation for that quadratic. All right, these are your practice problems for tonight. Pretty quick and easy. You're just finding the solution of each. So look at this graph and tell me what the solution is, and look at this graph and tell me what the solution is. They may either have 2, 1, or no solutions. Please take a picture of your practice problems and submit them to Edmodo.